The slide deck. First of all, thank you all for coming and spending some time today on this Uncat Demand Magic joint webinar. I'm Brandon Bruce. I'm the co-founder of a company called Uncat. Many of you may be familiar with us already, but for those of you that are new, I'll give a little tour of Uncat in a few minutes. But Uncat is short for uncategorized transactions, as you may have guessed, or as you may know already. So our application specializes in helping accountants and bookkeepers to clean up, fix, resolve uncategorized transactions with their clients. So to do that, we sync in transactions from accounting platforms like QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, Xero. We automatically notify clients, get their responses, so that then you can categorize those transactions, get them in the right place, close the books properly, preempt audits, file taxes the right way, do reporting, et cetera. So that's how we launched. We're a pandemic app. We built the app largely during 2020, launched at the end of that year. So we've been out in market for about four and a half years, about 20,000 professionals on the platform. We've added some really powerful receipt processing recently that we're excited about that I'll show you. And also the ability to request additional information from clients, things like bank statements, W-9s, things like that most of us have needs for. Today we'll be talking about automating accounting, so we'll talk on that topic in general, but then specifically, of course, our area of expertise is around our own app, Uncat. So I'll showcase that. Jason Hubbard is a good friend of mine and the founder of Demand Magic. Previously, he and I built a company together called Cirrus Insight. That was sales software that served sales teams. Had about 200,000 users around the world. Had a great experience building that company together. And now that I've started Uncat, and Jason has one of the leading firms that deals with marketing and demand generation, we've partnered up on a whole series of webinars, and this is one of them. He had a conflict today, so we planned the webinar together, but I'll do my best to cover it, and you'll all be able to connect with Jason afterwards. So we will, after the webinar, share the recording as well as the slide deck out to everybody. All right. So the rhetorical question, right? Are we stuck in a time warp? We always are. We're always looking for ways to get more efficient. Every job has a certain amount of manual tasks, if you will. I think when you're dealing with the books, if you're a bookkeeper or accountant, you're dealing with numbers, those often recur pretty often. So for us, in the sort of the founding story of Uncat, what we observed, and specifically my co-founder, Adam Slack, who runs a bookkeeping firm here in Knoxville called Two Roads, observed that he was sending out spreadsheet after spreadsheet to his hundreds of clients every month. And the clients did not love receiving those spreadsheets. And his team also didn't love processing them when they got them back. And these spreadsheets were of uncategorized transactions. And so it became a very manual process of running those exports, emailing them to the clients, following up with the clients, finally getting the responses, and then hand coding each response back into the accounting platform. And he was like, there's got to be a better way. So that's sort of the origin story of where Uncat came from. So we'll be talking about that and some other tasks that we sort of see in the market that we think are worth addressing, because if you can solve for those, it gives you more time to better serve your existing clients. In addition, a trend that we've seen increasingly is it opens up more time to add more clients. So it gives you more capacity to grow your firm without adding necessarily additional headcount or additional services. You can simply serve more clients because you're doing less of the tedious work and more of the strategic advisory. All right. So this has to do with, the data entry, reconciliation, chasing people for information. That seems to be a theme. Obviously, communication is super important. It's just making that communication really efficient. And so what we've observed in our niche at Uncat is that it's good for accountants and bookkeepers, but clients also really like it, right? And all of us here, I think, run our own small businesses. And so we get it as a client. They don't want to receive a spreadsheet with 100 transactions in it. It's really difficult to open and answer from the phone. It can be a little bit confusing. You can get halfway done, and then do you want to send it in when you're halfway done, or do you need to save it and finish it and then send it back? And unfortunately, it's instantly out of date because it's not in sync with the accounting software. So it's those types of tasks that we're looking to simplify so that the client can say, oh, this was a lot better. I didn't feel as burdened by this task. But all the things are accurate. So, to give an example of that, right? Transactions end up in an uncategorized bucket or suspense or ask client or ask my accountant because there's some uncertainty around it. It's a transaction where we have an expense with Amazon. Well, Amazon has like the better part of 6 million SKUs, so it could be lots of things. Let's say you even have a receipt for Amazon, so you know exactly what was purchased. The question typically becomes, why was it purchased? It might be a television. That doesn't necessarily mean we know how to categorize it, right? It could be a television for the office. Could be something for the owner's home, in which case maybe it's an owner's draw. Could be something that's a prize in a drawing for a client. Could be something that we got to take to a conference. So same television could be multiple different types of tax treatments and categorizations for that same TV. Similarly, you get deposits from places like Venmo and PayPal and Cash App, which are fantastic platforms, but there's a lot of uncertainty around like, okay, this Venmo came in, who was it from? And is that a customer? Was this a reimbursement from a friend, or was this a customer buying a product or service? And if so, which one was it that they bought? And so getting some clarity back from the client on that so that we can put it in the right account inside of QuickBooks is pretty vital. All right, so I've talked a little bit about the manual method, describing kind of where Adam came up with this idea from his experience running two roads. And the solution we tried to come up with is really, it's a communication tool between accountants and bookkeepers and their clients. And it's trying to take the sting out of the process to make it something that is timely and easy for the client to answer, and which in turn makes it easy for the accountant and bookkeeper to close the books and move on to the more strategic activities. So the keys that we've identified since the time that we launched, one, it's got to be super, super, super easy for the client to use to drive that client adoption and engagement. So a great example of that is the client gets a magic link. All they have to do is click that link and come straight into Uncat. They don't need to create an account. They don't have to set a password. They don't have to log in. They just click the link. It takes them straight in. They can access Uncat from a laptop. They can access it from a phone. And in terms of receipts, which I'll show off a little bit later, they can also just text message in a receipt or email in a receipt without even going to the web. So there's lots of different ways to kind of interface with Uncat, but each way has to be really, really easy for the client. The other thing that we've observed is that it's got to be in sync. And that may be kind of an obvious point, like, oh, of course, you're syncing the transactions, getting updates, and then syncing them back into QuickBooks. But when you look at the alternative, right, the old method, the manual method of using a spreadsheet, it's almost always and almost very quickly out of sync with the accounting software. So, no sooner have you sent that spreadsheet to the client than more transactions hit the bank feed, get processed, go into the ledger, and there's some mystery transactions. There's some uncategorized. So now what? Do we send a follow-up spreadsheet? Do we combine them into one spreadsheet? And are they constantly kind of ships passing by email with the client? And so we've endeavored to solve that. All right. In terms of receipts, we really had a similar observation, and most of this came from customer feedback, is, hey, you guys are solving for Uncats, but what about all the receipts? And interestingly, we've supported receipts from the time that we launched, which is to say, if there's an uncategorized transaction, you can add a receipt or other document that explains that transaction inside Uncat. We've always supported that. With our new receipts feature, we also are trying to get away from the old practice of a client dumping a whole bunch of receipts into an email, sending it to their bookkeeper accountant, and it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. Now it's the accountant's problem. They need to look through each individual receipt and put it onto the correct transactions in QuickBooks and figure out what they were for. What we've built is a way for the client to send those in, but instead of emailing them into the accountant, they can email it to Uncat or text it to us or upload it through our web app. And then we will process those receipts, meaning parse out the vendor, the amount, the date, and automatically attempt to match it to the right transaction in QuickBooks. We'll then show you that proposed match. And if it looks good, you can then say, hey, match, and done. If there is no matching transaction in QuickBooks, it may be because it was a cash transaction. It's not going to come in through the bank feed. And so from Uncat, you can actually create the transaction from scratch. And so it will create it in QuickBooks and then take the receipt and put it onto that transaction. And that's worth highlighting. Anytime that we're matching or you're creating a transaction inside of QuickBooks, the receipt that's come in through Uncat gets attached to that transaction. So when you're in QuickBooks, you're in your single source of truth, all of those attachments go into QuickBooks and live there as attachments on the individual transactions. All right. All the key for this, which is interesting, and here this slide is referring, specifically to documents, right? Being able to request things from clients. So, for example, ask questions back and forth about general topics like, hey, when's the next board meeting? When is the next reporting deadline? Hey, let's make sure we get this information for next tax season in early. But also asking for things like W-9s for vendors, like bank statements. If, let's say, the bank feed didn't flow through properly or there was a delay, hey, can we get a bank statement from the client? And here the key is that client communication is, in our opinion, vital. So while there are a lot of great and emerging artificial intelligence solutions out there, in our view, they're not designed to replace the relationship that you have with the client. And to wit, for the majority of transactions that come from a big platform like an Amazon, simply knowing that it came from Amazon is not enough for AI typically to say, oh, well, I know what category that should go into. And in fact, frequently it's guessing based on incomplete information, right? Just because it's from Amazon doesn't mean it's a book. And it doesn't mean it's the last 10 things you bought at Amazon, because Amazon sells so many things for so many different purposes. So it can certainly make an educated guess based on historical categorizations, and that can be super helpful. But it's also worth maintaining, preserving, encouraging that client relationship. And so, we see a lot of great feedback to the accountants and bookkeepers that use Uncat because the client is saying, hey, you're really on top of my books, right? You're looking through the transactions and you're highlighting the ones where you need additional information, need some more clarity. And I appreciate that's helping me run a better business. It also ensures that my books get closed on time and they're clean for tax season. So yeah, we certainly believe in the power of technology to automate or semi-automate a lot of activities and take a lot of time, yield a lot of time savings. But it is still important, and so we rely on those client relationships. All right. So this is the segue into a demo. So let me escape from the slide deck for a minute. Here, I will jump in and show you around Uncat a little bit. And to do that, let me start with just showing you the homepage. Perhaps most of you have been here already. This is uncat.com. And from here, if you like what you see today, and you're not already using Uncat, certainly start a free trial. Goes for 7 days. You can test it out with one client or a whole bunch of clients if you want, and really run it through its paces, right? The best way to test software is to test software. What we think will happen, and what happens for most people that try Uncat, is they get some great response from their client. It starts saving them time on day one, and they're hooked. And it's such an efficient, cost-effective application that it makes it easy to roll it out across as many clients as you want. So you get to choose which clients you want to connect to Uncat, and it just runs in the background. You don't have to trigger it to sync. It just happens. So it's kind of the little engine that could in the background, the little cat that could. So starting a free trial from uncat.com, super easy. Let me show you around the platform a little bit, and then certainly if you have questions as we go, I'm happy to answer them. So this is an example of the Uncat dashboard. It's showing a series of clients. You can have a whole bunch of clients here. We show 10 per page. So we've got accounting and bookkeeping firms that use our app that might have a handful of clients, a dozen clients, hundreds of clients. Uncat scales really nicely to handle really any size of practice or firm. You can jump to a client here that you've connected to Uncat. You can also just scroll like I did before and kind of see your clients at a glance. One of the great things about that is there's some immediate time saving. So instead of having 10 or 20 browser tabs open at the end of the month, trying to close the books for all these clients and handle all their uncategorized, they're all right here. So you can see all the uncategorized across all your clients from one convenient dashboard. And to look at one client in particular, here we're looking at Garfield, Canada. As you can tell, of course, everything has a cat theme when we show demos of Uncat. So here you can see there's been a transaction updated by a client. So it's highlighted in yellow, and we can review the description they left for us, and based on that description, we can reasonably come in and choose a category to categorize that transaction. We can also optionally assign a class. We can even expand the transaction to see some additional fields, so we could apply a tax, a customer, a location, etc. The other thing we can do for a transaction, let's take this expense for an example. If we selected it, we could come up here and split the transaction. We can also select multiple transactions and apply a bulk action, like I want to apply the same class to these 10 transactions all at once, or the same location. So it makes it easy to kind of process a lot of transactions in a short amount of time. The other thing that you can do here, for the other things, I should say, you can do from the dashboard, you can leave a message for your client. So let's say this was an incomplete description and I want to send it back to the client. I could ask a clarifying question here. You can also see attachments on transactions. You can upload your own attachments, but this is also a place that's frequently used by clients. So this is where they'll put in receipts and other documentation. You'll be able to see them here. And of course, they'll all sync into QuickBooks. And then when you're done categorizing, you come over here and approve it, save it, and it will sync into QuickBooks. It'll disappear from your dashboard. Now your work is done, and you can move on to the next transactions. You can update a whole bunch of transactions, then just click Save Updates at the bottom. As you would expect in the dashboard, you can sort by any column. So if you want to do transactions in order by their amount or by date or by the account that they came in from, you can do that. You can search for transactions here. So, I just want to see Amazon transactions, or I just want to see transactions that came from this vendor. You can do that here. There's also this little button, Notify Client Now. So say you're on the phone with a client, or you've just finished a meeting, you want to put Uncat top of mind, you can click that. It'll send them an instant notification. That'll go to them by email and optionally by text message if you put in their phone number. That said, typically clients just get notified on a regular cadence. And I'll show you that and how it's set up in client settings. So when you jump to settings for this client, for one thing, you can see which accounts we've chosen to sync into Uncat. And here you can choose as many or as few accounts as you want. And we will sync transactions that hit those accounts into Uncat basically in real time. You can also sync transactions missing a certain field. So for example, sync in all transactions missing a class. So even if they've been categorized already, let's say we still want to bring those in because we need to assign classes for this particular client. And you can also choose how far back you want to sync. So Uncat syncs back 3 months by default, but it can go back as far as you want. So if you get a new client, their books are a mess, you want to do a cleanup, here's where you can choose a date in the past. It'll just bill you as a one-time charge for those additional months. But Uncat is certainly heavily used for cleanup projects, typically, well, really year-round, but we see a lot of activity on it, right? End of year, beginning of year, and right prior to tax season when folks are trying to get cleaned up. Scrolling down, some of the key settings that I'll show you, the notification settings, this is the schedule that this client's being notified on. So here they're being notified 3 times a week. Pretty typical for Uncat, though, would just be to have it 1 day a week. And that way the client's just getting a weekly notification. If there are any transactions that need their attention, they'll get that in their inbox and it'll say, dear client, you've got $10,000 of transactions that need your attention. And that'll get the client to engage. They'll click on the magic link, come straight into Uncat where they can answer those questions. These are the dashboard settings. This is highly configurable. So you can really make Uncat work exactly the way you want for any particular client. The default is we want back from the client a description. So that's editable and required. And here also an attachment. Usually the receipt is obviously editable, meaning you can upload a receipt, and optional. In this case, we've required it. So we're saying, hey, you have to send in a receipt every time. What you can also do though is click this top toggle switch. We call it superpowers. And then you have control over exactly which fields the client should see, which ones they can update, and which ones are required. So if, for example, you want to require the client to add a class, I could toggle on this switch here, and then they'd be required to enter a class for every transaction that's in Uncat. So you've got quite a few options depending on what you want each particular client to be able to see and do. At the bottom is where you invite client users. You can invite as many users per client as you want. There's no additional charge. Here you can see an example of a client with 2 client users. Here is their email address. Here is their forwarding address, meaning how did they send receipts into Uncat? This is the address that they received to do that. You can copy it and send it to them if you want to or need to, but otherwise they receive it automatically. This is also where you can add a phone number for a client if you want them to receive text message notifications from Uncat. So for clients that aren't in their inbox very often, or maybe they're not good about keeping up with email, we found that sending them a text message is a great way to cut through the clutter. They're going to see that message and they'll likely act on it. So they'll get a notification. It's the same as the one they get by email. They can click the magic link in there. It'll take them straight into Uncat where they can make updates from their phone. So super efficient and really, really effective way to engage with clients. Also, by putting in this phone number, the client will have the ability to text in receipts straight to Uncat. So when they come into Uncat, they'll see a phone number they can use instead, and then they can just select receipts off of their phone files or their camera roll and text them into Uncat, which is really slick. It's really a great way for clients to be able to quickly do it without having to click through or log into anything. It's just sending a text message, which they're doing all day anyway. So those are some of the primary client settings. If I click on settings at the very top of the dashboard, this is going to go into the main firm settings. So it's going to show you a list of the clients you've connected to Uncat, right? You choose a client one by one if you want to connect them into Uncat, and it's super fast and easy to do that. From here, you just connect into QuickBooks and choose the client you want to connect. Here's a list of your coworkers, your colleagues in your firm. You can invite as many as you want here as well. There's no limit to the number of users and there's no additional cost. So here you can invite a user and assign them permission level. A team member can update transactions in the dashboard. A client admin can do that, and they can invite clients to Uncat and they can configure their settings. And then a firm admin can do all of the above, plus administer billing and also assign users. An example of assigning user here, the firm admin is going to see all clients automatically. This additional coworker user, however, is a team member, and we can click in this box to assign them to only see particular clients. So you can leave this blank if you want them to see all the clients in the firm, but populate it if you want them to only see particular clients. User settings is self-explanatory. Firm settings is useful. This is where your firm name will go, and it will show up at the top of the app for all your clients. You can upload your own logo. So I uploaded a little jungle cat icon as a demo logo. And then here you can customize the color of the app. Typically it's green. In this case, I've chosen kind of an orange to match the little jungle cat. So that way, when a client logs in, right, they're seeing your brand. They see your logo, your color, your name at the top. They know they're in the right place. And you establish a nice sort of a brand equity component. Here, we have a little self-certification program as you get up to speed with Uncat. So you can grab a badge and add it to your profile if you want. These are your receipt settings that you can use to send in files into Uncat for particular clients. And here's a number that you can use to text them in, or you can just add Uncat as a contact straight to your phone, to your address book. And then this is where you can manage billing. You just click here and you can see your invoices going back in time. We use Stripe as our primary platform for payment processing. So super easy. Up here is a general chat you can use to sort of chat with people internally in your firm. So if you want to have a conversation in Uncat with your colleagues, you can do that here. Of course, the question mark is to submit a support ticket if you ever need to, and we'll respond to that. And this button is to sign out if you ever need to do that, but that's pretty unusual. So going back to the dashboard, you can see the multiple clients here. We've already talked about the transactions tab, but there's two other tabs here, right? Requests, which is simply a way to ask the client for something. It's not connected to a particular transaction, but let's say we wanted a W-9 from a particular vendor. We could say, I'm looking for a W-9 from the vendor and I want to require an attachment. That way the client can respond simply by uploading that W-9. So it's a nice way to get those all in one platform versus reverting back to email to do it. And then meanwhile, our receipts module is here. So here you can see a receipt was uploaded. It came in through an email import. We parse the information. If we want to see the receipt, we can click here and we'll see the image of it. We'll see if it matched to anything. In this case, it did not match to an existing transaction. And so we would have the option, right? We can choose to see, hey, did it match? It did not. We did not create that transaction in QuickBooks yet. And so instead, if we wanted to, we could publish the transaction as an expense or as a bill, and then that receipt would sync into it. So it's got a lot of power and flexibility here. This is a link that will take you to the receipt in perpetuity, right? It's hosted. And then here is a way to leave a message about the receipt, like, whoa, only half of the receipt came through, what's happening? Or something like that. That way you can get to clarity with your client. And then this is a little way to have just a general communication with this particular client. It's a way to chat back and forth with them, and they'll receive those messages the next time they log into Uncat, and it'll be included in their next regular notification. All right, I will pause there because I want to check and see if anyone had any questions. Look like there's a couple. So have all these transactions been labeled uncategorized in QuickBooks Online? Great question, Dahlia. So yes, those transactions have gone into an account that you've selected to sync with Uncat. So typical choices would be accounts like uncategorized expense, uncategorized income, uncategorized asset, ask my accountant, ask my client, suspense, especially for zero users. But you can sync any account into Uncat. So basically you choose, and then anytime transactions hit those accounts, they'll sync in pretty close to real time. It's based on webhooks, and so it comes in really fast. Yeah, you bet. Let me go to Tiffany, and then I'll go to your next question. So can we set notifications to resend if a client has not responded to our initial request? It's a great question, Tiffany. So these notifications will go out on the schedule that's predefined in Uncat. A notification will not go out if there are no transactions or requests or receipts in their dashboard that need their attention. So one way to do it is to rely on that sort of weekly cadence, because that tends to get really good results in terms of client engagement and response. However, let's say they normally go out on a Monday for your client and you haven't heard back, and it's Thursday and you really need the answer by the end of the week. You can hit that notify now button. It will send it automatically. Or you could always set it up to automatically go out every Monday and every Thursday. And that way, if they handle all of the transactions between Monday and Thursday, the Thursday notification won't go out, because then their dashboard will be complete and they won't have any outstanding requests. So hopefully that makes sense. It's not doing exactly what you're asking in the chat, but it's certainly a way to achieve the same end. Dahlia, does the receipt matching happen to any transaction booked in QBO or just the categories synced with Uncat? Great question. It matches across all of QBO, all the transactions. So it's looking for a match because it's a way to gather receipts in general. So even if these are receipts for transactions that you've already categorized, like you know where they should be categorized, so you just do it. And then these are receipts, so supporting documentation for those transactions, whether expenses or deposits. So yes, we'll look across all of QBO, and if and when we find a match, we'll let you know in your receipts dashboard, and you can just confirm the matches, and then your work is done. But yeah, great question. It matches all across all transactions. All right, I'm gonna mark these as answered. If folks have additional questions, feel free to tap them in to Q&A or to the chat if you prefer. Either way works. There was one thing that I thought of just a minute ago related to transactions. And so let's go into client settings. And one of the things you can do that I didn't point out because I was focused on the text messaging is for a client coworker. So here's the admin, which is the first user invited for this client. They're going to see all the transactions. For when you invite a client coworker user, you also have the option to assign them to only see particular transactions. And so, for example, here we've assigned them to only see a particular payment account, meaning they're only going to see transactions that are uncategorized. They meet that uncategorized criteria from some account in QuickBooks, and they originated on this user's credit card. So that way, if you've got multiple users, they all have their own credit card, they're all doing their own spending, they're not really aware of each other's spending, they're not really aware of what's happening at headquarters necessarily, they're up regionally, let's say, you can just assign them to see the transactions that they should be responsible to, meaning the ones that they charged on their card. And so here we're showing this user transactions from their credit card, and we're assigning them also to see Ask My Accountant transactions. So there's ways you can configure this, right, to just show each individual user their individual credit card transactions that are also uncategorized. And that's a pretty popular feature for companies that you have multiple users for. So it's more than just an owner or a co-founder or a president or an internal controller. Instead, you've got maybe multiple people in the client company that need to be responding. And this is a good way to assign those. All right, follow-up question. Are the messages, notifications sent to clients, are those customizable? So what they do is they go out from us, because we're sending the notifications. So they go out from Uncat in the message. it references your firm. So it will say, hey, your accounting professional at ABC firm needs your attention on $10,000 in transactions. Also, they have 3 requests that also need your attention, right? So the name of your firm will be in there so that they know, okay, this is from Uncat and it's from my firm. But we don't have additional customization. Some folks have asked for, hey, can we put our logo in there? That can get pretty wonky when it comes to email. Sometimes logos don't look as good depending on format, color, all that sort of stuff. So we've avoided that so far, and the messages happen automatically, so they're not customizable per se on their way out. But yeah, hopefully that helps. Great question. Yeah, you bet. I think those were the main things that I wanted to share today. One of the takeaways is probably pretty obvious, is the fact that Uncat's really easy to use, right? There's a client settings page, there's the main dashboard page, and there's the overall firm settings page, and that's it. So we try to keep it really streamlined, really simple. We want it to be an application that saves you a tremendous amount of time. And so we don't want it to take very much time for you to invite your clients, to add your clients. We don't want to take it very long for the clients to understand it, basically just by looking at it and saying, oh, transactions, they need my attention. I will just answer those questions, right, if you're a client. And so this should be an app that pretty much more than almost all, if not all other apps, is really quick to set up and use and adopt, and then really low maintenance going forward, because it will just kind of run and help you close the books every month. Yeah, Delia, do you have a visual of what the client sees? I do. So let me jump to that tab. This would be the client tab. So now I'm a client user on that Garfield company. And so I'm going to see these transactions that need my attention. And here is where I can enter in that description if I want to. I can also see if there are any requests. There are not. I could make a request of my accountant or bookkeeper as a client. So it's kind of a nice way. Let's say the client needs some information. Here's a way to keep track of it right inside Uncat rather than reverting to a different form of communication like an email. And here is where, as a client, I can upload receipts. And then when I go to upload, it also says, hey, if you prefer, you can just email them in to this email. And then if they had a, if their phone number is in here, which theirs is, then here's how you can text them in. So yeah, that's a good quick overview of what the client sees. Obviously, very, very familiar to what you're seeing on the accountant side, but it's going to align with the permissions that you've set up for them, right? So here you can see right now, this firm is requiring receipts and description, which is correct. That's how we set it up in client settings. Tiffany, yeah, happy to review how Uncat's used for bookkeeping cleanup. Yes, oftentimes, new client joins, there's a lot of cleanup to do. There may be a lot of transactions in Uncategorized at that time, or you realize how messy the books are. You have a lot of questions, and you know that a lot of transactions are about to be in Uncategorized because it's unclear from the accounts what they should be for. And so we want to get that clarity back from the client. So yeah, so to set that up, Uncat, let me go into the settings to show you that, is when you're first inviting the client, it automatically syncs back 3 months. So if you're generally up to date with the client, that's going to be sufficient, right? You're probably up to date as of now, and so you're really using Uncat going forward. Nevertheless, it's going to sync back 3 months. If you need to go back further from client settings, you go to the sync start date, and you can choose a date in the past. So let's say it's a new client, you look at their books, it's like, we're going to have to do a lot of changes here, and we're going to probably file some amendments to our tax filings for the last year or two. You can come back in here and you could sync back into 22 or into 2023, choose the applicable month. We will then run a sync that brings in those uncategorized transactions all the way back from that start date up to today. And to do that, as I mentioned before, there's a one-time charge for the additional months beyond the 3 that happen automatically. But yeah, super easy to set up. Just choose the month here, and it'll walk you through those 2 or 3 steps. Yeah, hopefully that answers the question, but thanks again for asking it, because it is a really popular use case. All right. Any other questions I can help with? Yeah, what is the charge for additional months to sync? It's a great question. So Uncat today is $5 a month per client, and it's $5 for those additional months of syncing back beyond the first 3. That said, the app has been out for 4.5 years. We just added that big receipts module, which we're super excited about, and people are really loving it. We've got the request module. So we've added a lot of features and functionality. Some of those, like the receipt processing, et cetera, also comes with some additional compute on our side, so some additional costs. And so the price going forward as of July 1st will be $9 a month. So we run that by a number of folks, including a lot of our existing customers, gotten good feedback on that. People honestly have been really supportive about like, yeah, you should do that, right? We want you to keep innovating, adding more features, keep providing great support, et cetera. So that's what it will be going forward. So yeah, thanks for the question. And on that, I can show our homepage again. So again, this is where you'll see the cat. I know we've just seen a demo for an additional sort of a demo, but also a really entertaining look at Uncat and the use cases. Jason Stats, who many of you may know, runs the Realize community, is really out front in terms of AI for accounting, and is just a great evangelist for the space and teacher. Recorded a video about Uncat. You can watch that here from our homepage. I think you'll laugh. It's really enjoyable. And then there's some additional information here on our site about how Uncat works. There's some nice customer reviews, and it kind of walks you through the process. But most importantly, this is where you click to start a free trial, and it's super easy. I'll show you what it looks like. You'll just come here, put in your firm name, your email address, and you're good to go. So it'll probably take you less than 10 seconds to get started and start adding some clients and test it out. All right, let me give a minute to see if there are any additional questions. Feel free to pop them into chat or into the Q&A. Happy to answer those. At the beginning, I put in my email address. It's just brandon@uncat.com. So if you have any questions at all that come up after the webinar, we'll certainly circulate the slides. We'll circulate a video of the demo so I can watch it again or share it internally with colleagues if you want to or need to. But yeah, feel free to email me anytime with any questions you have before you get started with Uncat, or if you get started and you're like, now, wait a second, how do I set up that thing? Feel free to email me. We'll jump in and help you out. But what I think you'll find is once you're in the system, you'll be able to get it set up pretty fast. Tiffany, my pleasure. Thanks for joining. I think it'll be really helpful for that client, for the cleanup side. So let me know if you need anything from our side. We're happy to help. And yeah, Delia, I really appreciate it. Thanks for coming. Thanks for your great questions. And same for you and for everybody else. If you have any questions at all, definitely reach out. Oh, I should also mention, if any of you use Xero in your practices, we will be at XeroCon in August, and then a little bit later in the fall. I presume that most, if not all of you, use QuickBooks Online, and we will be at Intuit Connect. Again, we've been a sponsor the last several years. We'll be out there again in Las Vegas. So if you're planning to go to either of those conferences, definitely come by the booth, say hello. We typically give away little stuffed Beanie Baby cats, which are super popular. So come by the booth early so I can hook you up with one of those. You can clip it to your bag. Yeah, it'd be great to meet as many of you as I can in person. So yeah, swing by the conferences and say hello. I'm easy to spot. I'm 6'8", so you will undoubtedly see me at the expo. And you'll see a big image of a giant cat riding a pony. The story behind that, by the way, and then I'll let you go, is that we essentially wanted to convey the process of herding cats, because it can be a lot of work to chase clients for information. And then ironically, we found this great image of a cat doing the herding, right? Astride a pony riding through the desert, and made us smile. And so we adopted that. The other fun thing that I'll point out is on our Uncat logo, the U is actually a question mark turned horizontal. So Kaylee, our graphic designer, did that, and I thought it was clever because these are mysterious transactions. These are transactions we have questions about. Someone not too long ago said that, well, the U also looks like a cattail. That was not our intention, but now that they mention it, we're going to go with it. So it's a question mark and a cattail, and it represents the brand. So with that, I will let you go. Thank you all for spending time with me. Shoot me an email if you have any questions, and I'll look forward to seeing you at one or more of the conferences this year. Take care, everybody.